Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, brought to you, as you heard, by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. And Rodney, we certainly hoped that we would be doing this show coming off another national championship for Alabama. But for the second straight offseason, Alabama, well, actually the third straight offseason now, Alabama will go into it without a national championship. More on that coming up. Also, Rodney, for the second straight year, Alabama is going to be looking to bring in a new defensive coordinator. According to ESPN's Chris Lowe, still not confirmed, still not anything official, but Alabama's veteran defensive coordinator Kevin Steele plans to retire from coaching, and Steele and Lowe are friends, so you can bet this is the case. Steele just finished his third stint under Nick Saban. He turned 66 in March, just completed his 40th year in coaching, including 13 years in the SEC. He's a credit to the profession. Alabama was second in the SEC in scoring defense and 16th nationally, 19 points per game. Still spent 2022 as the defense coordinator at Miami before returning to Alabama, as I mentioned, for the third time. Still has been a defensive coordinator for 12 of his years in coaching at 5 different schools: Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, LSU, and Miami. All right, Ryan, let me get you in here, because this makes sense from the standpoint that this is his 10th year. So he's vested in the state teachers' retirement system. At the same time, I think that when he took the job to come back, I expected him to be here longer than 1 year, Rodney. What do you make of this?
Yeah, no, look, I thought more than 1 year for sure. I think we both really knew that it wouldn't be much longer than that. I mean, we knew that he was probably near the end of his career. I think he did a great job, there at Miami for that 1 year, and he had the opportunity to come back. I'll say this, though, Gary. I think the job that he did in 1 year, there's going to be some residual from that, because I think he brought back kind of the mindset with this Alabama defense. They really improved fundamentally. I think they were a much better tackling team. I think that they, began to you got that feel of what you used to remember in some of those defenses in the past. So I think he did a fantastic job, and I think he'll be felt over the next few years.
So that's the main thing you take from his 1 year tenure here, is just attitude, getting back to kind of the Alabama way of playing defense?
I really do. I really do, man. Like I said, I was impressed with what he did. Even in a very short period of time in the 8A game, you could kind of see the players were a lot more confident. I think he simplified some things, some calls, and I think it was really helpful to the young players to kind of learn that communication. So I think a lot of things improved, and I think he had some really good staff members around him defensively, and I thought that they did an outstanding job this year.
Of course, there are a lot of coaches out there that would love to be Nick Saban's defensive coordinator at Alabama, even though people say Saban's the pseudo-defensive coordinator. Let's talk about some potential candidates to replace Steele, and let's begin on the Alabama staff. Travaris Robinson, T-Rob, secondary coach. There have been a lot of, and we're taking a look at him right now, really energetic young coach, was with Muschamp as the defense coordinator at South Carolina. Great recruiter. There's been a lot of talk that maybe he called the defense at times this year. What are his chances, Rodney, you think, of getting the defense coordinator's position in place of Steele?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. We never really know what Nick Saban's kind of plan is. Sometimes you think you have it read and he goes in a different direction. He's done that before. But I think when you talk about T-Rob, look, you're right. He is one of the best coaches in America. I think he's certainly one of the best recruiters, an elite recruiter, if you want to term it that way. But he's an outstanding defensive coordinator as well. He's done a really good job. I think he's been a defense coordinator something like 5 years in his career, Gary. Personally, I see this would be a great move for Alabama for a lot of different reasons. I think stability, continuity, all of those things, as well as what we talked about is him as a coach and as a recruiter.
Certainly Nick Saban is used to this. There's been very few years, maybe not any, where there's been a staff that's returned intact here at Alabama. But a couple openings on the defensive side. Holman Wiggins is left as the wide receivers coach. So you're going to have some new blood, some new coaches coming in here for this 2024 season.
Yeah, you are. Holman Wiggins kind of bolted real quickly after that Michigan game. I don't know if that was a surprise but it certainly, I think, caught a lot of people on the outside a bit off guard as quickly as it happened, Gary, going to Texas A&M. And look, you know, there's some buzz right now that there may be another change coming on that defensive staff. Again, it's not confirmed, but where all of this right now is speculation because it's not been announced. But there's some talk that maybe inside linebackers coach Robert Bala might be headed to Georgia Tech. So we'll see. Yeah,
we'll keep an eye on it for sure. You mentioned Michigan. That's where we go next. We would have loved to have seen Alabama in that game last night. And, you know, I handicapped this Michigan-Washington game all wrong because I should have just been very simple in my approach. If Michigan's good enough to beat Alabama, they're good enough to beat Washington. And they did. Jim Harbaugh gets to raise the gold trophy as the confetti rained down on Michigan. Blake Corum ran for 134 yards. Michigan rushed for over 300 yards. Really, they dominated the game. And give Washington credit for hanging in there for a while. But listen, I was shocked at how slow Washington looked on defense, and Michigan did what they did against Alabama. They controlled the lines of scrimmage, man. I know a lot of people are talking about Georgia. I still think Alabama's capable of beating Michigan. They had a shot, but Michigan's the best team in the country, in my opinion. They went 15-0. They beat Ohio State. They beat Alabama. They beat Washington. When you can run the ball, the way they can run the ball, Rodney, and you can shorten the game and you wear people down in the fourth quarter, that's a formula for success. They're not flashy, but that's a really good football team.
And that's the reason a couple of weeks ago we made our predictions. It's basically what I said. That was the thing that I was most fearful of, was the fact that, hey, you know what? They're not flashy, and we said that. But they're really, really solid, fundamentally sound. They don't make a lot of mistakes to beat themselves, and, you know, that's really the formula that they used, Gary. But I want to say this, too, about Washington. I think Kalen DeBoer, the job he's done in 2 years, turning that program around, getting them to the national championship game. You look at his overall record, it's like 104 and 12,
I think, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. He's won 3 NAIA national championships. He's got a bright, bright future.
Yeah, and a word on that Michigan defense, because I think Michael Penix is fabulous. He didn't look really good last night. And I'm not making any excuses for Jalen Milroe, but Michigan showed again, they're the best defense in the country. They were statistically. They took on 2 dynamic quarterbacks back-to-back. You know, I had said that Michigan hadn't seen anything like Jalen Milroe. Then I said, well, I don't think they've faced a passer like Michael Penix. They did the job on both those guys.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Washington's offensive line, I think they won the Joe Moore Award as the nation's outstanding offensive line. They did. And look, I'll say this. I mean, Penix doesn't have the talent around him. I mean, maybe at wide receiver, some of the skill spots, but defensively, they don't have what it takes to play with Michigan right now. But I do think Kalen DeBoer is going to get them there. They're going to be a real power with him.
Rod, a word on the fact that this is the first time since Nick Saban's been at Alabama that the Crimson Tide's gone 3 years without a national championship. Now, they played for it a couple of years ago. They were in the playoff this year, but still, this is 3 years now without a national title. What does that mean?
Nothing. Okay. I mean, you know, look, I mean, these are unrealistic expectations. Alabama has set some historical records, if you want to say that. And I think sometimes when these things happen like this, people make a big deal out of it. But, Gary, how realistic? You know how unrealistic it is to think you're going to win a national championship every 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's just not realistic.
Now, I think Nick Saban outcoached Kirby Smart in the SEC championship game. Did Jim Harbaugh, hang on before we get to coach talk, real quick. Did Jim Harbaugh outcoach Nick Saban in the college football playoff semifinal?
You know, look, I think he did a great job in that game. Look, if we're going to say Michigan's the best team in the country, Alabama shut them out in the second half, until the last 4 minutes. I think really what happened is Michigan had a veteran football team. We said that was going to be a key. Michigan had a veteran, experienced football team. They were really hungry, Gary. And I think the difference is Alabama didn't put them away when they had a chance. They had to settle for that field goal. If they'd have been able to score there, Alabama wins.
Two scores, they get up 2 scores, they win the game. All right, Rodney, we're going to change gears for Coach Talk. We're going to talk hoops. Alabama basketball won its SEC opener on the road, beating Vanderbilt 78-75 this past Saturday in Nashville Memorial Gym. A win is a win, but it wasn't the performance that head coach Nate Oates was looking for. The Crimson Tide led by 18 in the first half, led by 11 with 3.5 to go, and really down the stretch had to hang on for dear life against Vanderbilt. Nate Oates said, down the stretch, Alabama just stopped playing good basketball.
Ball quit moving. Guys got a little bit selfish with it, in my opinion. We didn't score in the last 4 minutes of the half. We started driving it into double teams and tight quarters and turning it over. Our 16 turnovers hurt our defense and our offense both. So I hope it's a wake-up call for everybody that you have to keep playing the right way no matter what the score is, because stuff can flip in a hurry.
All right, any road win, as I said, is a good road win, particularly at Memorial Gym. But this is not a very good Vanderbilt team. Still, Alabama got it done. Sears had 21, including 14 in the second half. Alabama right now is playing its SEC home opener against a South Carolina team that dictates the pace. They like to slow it down. They play great defense. But Alabama right now has the lead, 28-27, with about 2 minutes to go in the first half at Coleman Coliseum. Again, South Carolina, they are successful right now in slowing it down. Alabama, second in the nation in scoring. South Carolina first in defense. But Bama does have the lead. Rodney, let's talk a little basketball. Certainly Alabama wants to hang on and win this game tonight at home. 6 o'clock Tuesday night tip. Tough time. Not a lot of people at the Coliseum right now for this Alabama team. And I know it's very early in conference play. We know how tough their pre-conference schedule was. I think they're a good team. I think they've got some shooters. I do still think the issues that they had in December, they're going to have them in March. They just aren't a very physical team inside. And I think that when they play these experienced, big physical teams, they're going to struggle. That's just my take.
Yeah, and you could be right. I mean, again, I think it's style. A lot of style right now is kind of lends itself to what you're talking about, not being quite as physical. But at the same time, Gary, like you said, I really believe that win at Vanderbilt, I mean, right now for this team, being able to win on the road in the SEC, every time you can eke out a win, it's really important.
Yeah, you'll take it. That is for sure. All right, we'll have an update on the score later on in the show. Well, still to come on TITV, football recruiting. Boy, this past Saturday at the Army All-American game, it was a good day for Alabama. We'll have the latest. And also, we'll be talking about the latest on the transfer portal, too. Alabama's losing some good players now. And one of them's Kendrick Blackshire. There's no other way around it. I mean, the portal is giveth and it taketh away. And also, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only. Tider Insider TV will return right after this break.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I will be taking my talents to the University of Alabama.
Alabama, oh, and everybody approves.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I will be attending the University of Alabama.
The Crimson Tide with another pickup today.
Love to hear those words, don't you? The next 3 or 4 years I'll be spending at the University of Alabama. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Welcome back to TITV. Good day at the All-American Bowl this past Saturday out in Texas for Alabama football. Let's start with Daniel Hill, the powerful running back out of Meridian, Mississippi. This kid, some people with Jerome Bettis because he's athletic, but he can run you over. 5'11", about 240 pounds. His father, Demetrius Hill, was a great defensive lineman at Mississippi State. Past season, he rushed over the past 2 seasons, over 3,100 yards and 39 touchdowns. This was a guy, Rodney, that kept people in suspense for a while, but he had already signed with Alabama. So he just made the announcement on Saturday, but he's signed, sealed, and delivered for the Crimson Tide.
You're right there. You're talking about him being a sledgehammer. You get inside that 5-yard line, he's going to be hard to deal with. But you know what, Gary, the thing that really caught my attention, I watched his tape going back to the summer, his junior tape, and really got my attention with his ability to catch the football. Does a tremendous job of that as well.
Yeah, he'll join a running back room with Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, Richard Young, signee Kevin Riley, and now Daniel Hill, so it looks good. Also, you already talked a little bit about Hill, but again, you think he's a guy, we mentioned those running backs, but they're losing, of course, Roydell Williams and Jace McClellan. Do you think he's a guy that could come in and play early?
You never know. I mean, again, he may have a role because of his ability as a power runner. I mean, he's a guy that, again, versatile, catches the ball extremely well. And you mentioned his dad, Demetrius Hill. Of course, you covered him. I covered his dad in high school. He was a great, great player. He would have been a 5-star in today's, lingo, but and wanted to come to Alabama.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Thought he was coming here at one time. Wound up at junior college and then at Mississippi State, but he was a dynamic defensive lineman. His son, though, is at Alabama. And you saw 4-star quarterback Zay Minchie out of Daytona Beach, Florida. Thing you notice about him is his size. Close to 6'2", athletic corner, physical, guy that can play the ball, can tackle. This is a big deal to pull this guy out of Florida, Rodney, because he had a lot of just the in-state schools alone that really battled for his services. Big pickup like Hill, he's already signed with the Crimson Tide.
I think you're right, Gary, because you talked about you know, it used to be kind of routine earlier in Nick Saban's career to go down to Florida and beat those schools out for these type of guys. But now with the NIL and the way things are done, it's really harder to pull out a top-notch guy like him from Daytona Beach. But you're right, he's got a lot of skill here. He can play safety, can play corner. He's really versatile. You remember Terry and Arnold was a really good safety coming out of high school. Ended up a corner here. Now he's probably going in the first round. I mean, Zay Mincy is an outstanding player, just adding to a great secondary class that Alabama's bringing in.
And Rodney, of course, you're waiting until February for Ryan Williams out of Saraland. He would be the cherry on top of a great recruiting class already. You get Ryan Williams. Again, I don't know if that'll move them past Georgia for #1, but it would certainly be a real nice crowning moment for a really good class.
Yeah, I think when I look at Georgia's class, just to kind of quickly compare, Georgia's got some massive offensive linemen, and, Gary, they recruited really, really well on the defensive line. I think that might be a little bit of a difference between those two classes, although Alabama got some good players there. But you're right. I think Ryan Williams, there's not a better skill player, I don't think, in the country.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the portal. Rodney, a lot like eligibility now. I don't know. The portal supposedly has dates that you can enter, but I mean, I thought it already closed, but on Monday, Kendrick Blackshire became the latest Alabama player to enter the NCAA transfer portal. A really good special teams player, physical linebacker. Here you see him against Middle Tennessee, just take the ball away from the dude. Played in 24 games in 3 seasons, 25 tackles, 2 for loss, that forced fumble and recovery there against Middle Tennessee. Out of Duncanville High School in Texas, where he's a 4-star prospect. Really physical player. You know, Alabama's got good players, but I always thought number 40 was good enough to play here. But after 3 years, I guess if you don't feel like you've gotten your shot, I can't blame you for moving on.
Yeah, you know, he did come in opportunities that he had when guys either were shook up or whatever it might have been, a little banged up. But, you know, you had Deontay Lawson, you had Jahad Campbell, you had Trez Marshall this past year. It just made it really difficult for him to get on the field. But you're right, somebody's going to get a really good player.
And like I said earlier, too, Jace McClellan announcing today that he's going into the draft. All right, coming up, we're going to get to our popular Bama in the NFL segment, but also we're going to be getting to phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number, 205-348-9882. That's 205-348-9882. So go ahead and send us an phone call, get on the line. We'll be honest with you. Rodney and I are having some issues we can't hear, but they will. If you call in, they will tell us what your question is. So we will take phone calls even though we can't hear anything. And we'll be right back after this. All right, Bama in the NFL, another big packed weekend, the final weekend of the regular season. In Nashville, this is Trevor Lawrence hooking up with Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, 59-yard touchdown strike here. He went over 1,000 yards. Alabama becomes the first school ever, Rodney, to have 4 receivers over 1,000 yards receiving in the same season. Ridley is one of them. Derrick Henry in that same game, 18-yard touchdown here. If this is his final game as a Titan, what a way to go out. 153 yards, 19 carries, a touchdown, as the Titans actually knocked the Jaguars out of the playoffs. Jacksonville could have won the division with a win. Jordan Battle, his first career pick, covering center field there for the Bengals against the Browns. Cincinnati wins that one 31-14. The Browns set a lot of guys out. Here's Jerry Jeudy getting a 24-yard touchdown. Vegas, though, defeated the Broncos 27-14. Bama in the NFL. It's a big deal every Sunday. All right, welcome back into the show. Let's get to our calls. And first up is Tim in Northport. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Gary, Rodney, how y'all doing?
Okay, like I said, I can't hear you, Tim, but they're letting me know what you said, so I just don't want to cut you off. That's why I'm waiting to talk. Is there a limit to the amount of players a team can pick up from the transfer portal? Tim, there's not. They can sign as many as they want. The key is you can't go over 85, though, in total scholarships, Rodney, and you got to balance that out between signees and the portal.
Yeah, and right now, Alabama have 3? I think 3.
Yeah,
right?
3 players coming in. Yeah,
coming in. So got a lot of guys leaving. But Gary's right. I mean, I think they're going to go into the portal and get some more guys before this is all said and done. All
right. Thanks for the call, Tim. And we'll go down to Daphne and Bob. Go ahead and ask your question, and they'll relay to me what you're saying.
First, I want to thank you. We missed you, and we're glad you're back on. We enjoy the program. The center, was he injured part of the year? And second, we have a center from Fort Worth that should be coming on.
Right.
What's his size?
Okay. I think, Rodney, it's about who will be the center. I think it might have been Terrence Ferguson had he not gone into the portal, with McLaughlin leaving to go to Ohio State. That's a good question. They're going to have to find a center.
Yeah, I really wish T.J. Ferguson would have stuck around. I mean, it looks like he's visiting Florida State. I don't know if he's made a decision. I wish he would come back, actually. But, you know, again, they have to find a center. James Brockermeyer's been here a while. I don't know if he's coming back right now. I mean, there's not been any word on that. I suppose he could. Maybe a little undersized, Gary, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Rock Montgomery, maybe they would try him inside. He's a young player that was a freshman this year. I don't know if they might try a guy like, and again, I'm just throwing out names because they're looking for guys. Olas Lennon. I don't know if they would try one of those guys because Olas could play guard, he could play tackle, could he play center? I mean, I really don't know. You just kind of almost have to see if he could do that. But don't forget about the portal, Gary. There's a chance, the portal. Now, could a true freshman, could Casey Poe come in, get big enough, maybe be the center? William Sanders from right down the street at Brookwood, maybe he's a guy that if he could get big enough, could do that. But right now, I think center is a really, really key spot they have to fill, and it may be the portal.
All right, thanks for those phone calls. We'll be back with our email question of the day next. Alabama women's basketball had a disappointing home loss against Ole Miss to open SEC play, but bounced back nicely on Sunday on the road at Missouri, 79-64. Alabama really dominated the game. It was a big road win at a place that's tough to play. So the Crimson Tide gets to 1-1. They'll remain on the road. They take on Georgia in Athens this Thursday. That'll be a 6 p.m. tip for Alabama over there in Georgia. All right, welcome back in. Let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. Here is the question of the day. It's in regards to basketball, Rodney. Why is Alabama so soft inside on defense from Martin and Gardendale? I don't know if I'd agree with saying soft. I do think they've got some issues. So, you know, they don't have a ton of size, and when I mean size, they got height. They don't have a lot of physicality, Rodney, so we got about 30 seconds here, but this is an area where they need to improve. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, you mentioned it very earlier. We thought this was the year that Bediako was really going to take off, and, you know, his departure, I think, really hurt this team.
All right, thanks for the email question of the day. We're going to take our final timeout, and we'll come back to wrap up this edition of Tider Insider TV right after this. Great start for Alabama gymnastics in Las Vegas for the Mean Girls Super 16 Gymnastics Championships. The Tide took on number 5 UCLA, number 7 Cal, and number 17 Auburn. Alabama won it with a score of 197.125. That's big. They return to Tuscaloosa this Saturday night for the, or Friday night, I should say, for the SEC opener at 6 p.m. against Missouri at Coleman Coliseum. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of TITV. Quick basketball score. Alabama leads at the half over South Carolina 30-29. Replay tonight at 10:30 on WVUA 23 or catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Good night, everybody.